So you're a government employee and you're thinking about retiring or resigning. Let me ask you this. Do you want to ensure that you're choosing the best path? Do you want to make certain that you're paying the absolute minimum in tax? And do you want to ensure that you never run out of money? And most importantly, are you open to getting advice from a trusted specialist, or do you feel like you've already figured this all out? Now let me share with you a story. Just last month, I connected with a government employee with 6 million Rand ready to invest, and he reached out to me eager to secure his future. But this is what might surprise you. I turned him down. Yes, even though it was a 6 million Rand investment, I said no. And why? Because he was stuck with what I call the 5 deadly doubts. 5 beliefs that were holding him back, making it impossible for him to fully commit to a plan. And without that commitment, even the best advice is wasted. So in this video, I'll be revealing those 5 deadly doubts, what they can cost you, and most importantly, how you can overcome them to secure your financial future, whether you choose to retire or resign. Now, curious to see if you have one of these deadly doubts? Let's get started and make sure you watch until the end. The first one here is fear of change. Now, I understand this because you might have been working within your sector for decades. And human nature, we all don't like change, right? We get into a comfort zone. So you might be inside of your space for so many years, but also you've been managing your finance in a certain way. See, you've been used to managing your money in a certain way. It's become a way of life. You've been managing your finance pretty much from the time that you started work, or maybe even way back when you were receiving an allowance, right? But from the moment that you started to gain access to money, you've been doing this on your own, or perhaps after you, if you have a spouse or somebody to guide you, but you have that type of guidance. Whatever it is, you have a working solution, something that's been your guiding light, and a system that you've been following all along. When it comes to connecting with me, as what was happening with this member, is my goal is to look at how can I ensure that you are paying the least in tax? How can I ensure that you are investing money in a way where your capital is secure, especially if you're aiming at resigning? How can I ensure that you're able to leave a legacy if this is something that's important for you? And sometimes it might require, actually, in most cases, right, it requires an adjustment to the way in which you're doing things, right? Meaning, you might be following a particular path, you headed in this direction. However, in that direction, you would be paying the tax that you've been paying all along. You agree? All this while you've been paying the tax that you've been paying. And my role when I step in is to analyze this information carefully and identify what are the ways legally in which I can help you to reduce your tax. And it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to get you to a different space. I still may get you to where you want. However, it does mean that we might have to do a bit of a detour, right? Nothing's wrong with it. It needs to be something that is legal, obviously. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to shoot these videos, right? My license will be revoked. But I still want to make sure that I'm creating something in a way that is very tax efficient. And sometimes that might feel a bit uncomfortable to you because, again, you've been used to planning your taxes or planning your finance in a certain way. And this is why I was asking, are you open to receiving some good advice in order to do things differently? Now, this particular member was not comfortable with making the change. Despite the tax being there, the member was still okay. Why? Because the avenue that I was sharing with the member, it was just too difficult for him to adjust, right? He didn't really want to make any of those changes. He didn't really want to implement it. And one of the reasons that I turned this member down is at some point in the future, if the member reaches out to me to say, hey, Devon, I ended up paying 100,000, I ended up paying 500,000 in tax. Why didn't you stop me from doing this? It does create a bit of a problem. And I don't want to get myself in a situation where I say to the member, hey, listen, I did give you this advice in the beginning and you chose not to follow it. It just becomes unpleasant. And at the space where I am in my career right now, I want to make sure I'm delivering value to people who need it the most. And usually those are the members who want to actually implement the guidance, right? And not every single member wants to be able to follow this. So this is the first part, the fear of change, and I covered tax from that perspective. It also links in with the second one, which is trust. Now, unfortunately for this particular member, and maybe it's happened to you, maybe it hasn't happened to you, but the member actually lost some money previously. And it made this member become very reluctant to wanting to invest money. He was very fearful about investing money. He was just extremely cautious. And again, he had formulated a pattern of saving money, right? See, again, fear of change. He was used to saving his money in a bank, but having money inside of a bank account means he opened himself up to something called a state duty. He was paying higher taxes because he was paying tax on the interest. And he didn't want to change this because he had lost money previously from investing. It wasn't just that, it became a trust issue because he had 5 different financial planners previously, or advisors, right? He had connected with 5 different advisors. He connected with different advisors even when he was making this decision of retiring and resigning. And each time that he went to somebody, he got differing opinions, different views. And it became confusing, difficult for him to know who to trust. And I can completely relate to this. It's happened to countless members. In fact, every single member that I connect with has had some advisor or planner in the past. So the fact that they're coming through to me means something didn't go well. You agree? So this becomes the other issue. It's from a trust perspective. And I've shared in previous videos, there are ways in which you can overcome this. Unfortunately, I'm not able to rewind time and go back to the point where you lost money or where you had an unpleasant experience. So we can't do that, right? But view it from this perspective. Have you ever been into a restaurant, you ordered a particular meal, and that meal was not very good, right? It was a bad meal. And the next time you head over to the restaurant, when that happens, right, you're not going to say you're never going to eat out again. You agree? You wouldn't say that because it was just a bad experience at that particular restaurant. I'm guessing that you're probably going to want to go to another restaurant. Maybe now you're going to ask some of your colleagues. You're going to get some referrals, isn't it? You can ask people, hey, which restaurant have you been to? Maybe you want to go online and you have a look at the reviews. Maybe you want to research in advance and you want to have a look at the menu if it has something that's suitable for you. So notice, although you had the first experience where you were scarred and the food wasn't prepared well or the environment wasn't good, whatever it was, right? It changed the way that you had felt about the experience. It was a bad meal. You still can open yourself up to a second experience. And the second experience might be something that's good. You see? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do investing. And this is why I record the YouTube videos, because there's no investing that you have to do by watching this. You agree? It's just you investing your time, but you're not investing any money. You don't have to make any mistakes, but it's empowering you with information. It's empowering you with knowledge so that you can make wiser choices. So this is the same that I was sharing with this particular member from a trust perspective. We can't really go back. I can't recover his money. I can't go back and explain what happened with the previous advisors and why the advice differed to my end. What I can say is I'm specializing in this field and I'll do the best that I can, right, to the best of my ability. And keep in mind, just like the example I used with the restaurant, sometimes you might have a bad experience. It doesn't mean that every single restaurant's a bad restaurant. There are good restaurants out there. Doesn't mean that every single financial planner is a bad financial planner. There are good financial planners out there. And again, you can test this out, right? You can test this out, maybe even book a consultation, have a 1-hour session, something like that, which I do as well, an introduction session so that we get to test the environment, right? And we see that way if we're a good fit. Then the third one, and this is interesting, and again, I can't blame him for this one because of having the trust issue. Penny wise, pound foolish. I'll use an example here from a cost perspective and a tax perspective. When I was showing him what were the costs on resignation, I'm using figures to make it round and easy for you to understand. Say the cost for the resignation was $100,000 in my example, right? That was total all of the costs, including everything that needed to happen. Now, the member was extremely concerned about this having to spend this amount of money because, again, having had a bad experience in the past, it's very natural for that to happen. Let's face it, $100,000 in my example is quite a significant amount of money as well to outlay. Now, in focusing on that and why I'm saying penny wise, pound foolish, the member failed to see that the tax saving was over $1 million. See, it's 10 times more. So if you look at this carefully, the amount of savings that I can generate for this member from a tax perspective is 10 times more the income. Now, this is in my example, right? Sometimes it could be more, sometimes it could be less. But what I'm sharing with you is when planning is done right, when you get this done correctly, you shouldn't really have to pay out of your pocket for good advice because good advice must pay for itself. You agree? And the way I like to do this is from a tax perspective, saving on the tax cost, because it would have gone to SARS in any event. So we plan carefully and legally, of course. And then when we do this from an investment perspective, I also like to ensure that we grow in capital. So you can see, although you have costs, capital is growing, which means you're earning enough to cover your income, plus you're earning enough to cover the costs. So keep in mind, when you're going from this perspective, you're going to have some costs either way, right? Whether you choose to retire or resign, someone's going to benefit. Someone's going to be earning an income. Someone's going to be collecting something, either route, right? You just want to analyze to see which option allows you to get the most leverage from it. Let's head over to number 3. And this was challenging for this member as well. And this is why I put it as the 5 deadly sins, right? The member had access to some colleagues, some work colleagues, and these work colleagues had had bad experiences in the past. Bad experiences with advisors, bad experience with resigning, and there was a fear, right? There was a fear that what if the same situation happens to this member? In addition to that, the member had part of his family, his kids, who were very afraid about investing. Again, maybe they had their own investments in the past or some negative experience within the family that caused concern. And this made it very difficult for the member to move forward because of the amount of pressure. Sometimes, or how do we overcome this? Well, the best way to do this is you plan for you. You plan for yourself. You look to see an option that works best for you, and you will know in your heart when you connect with someone who's genuinely interested to help you. You will know in your heart when you go through all the details and the comparisons of retiring and resigning, which option works best for you, right? You can go through those and run through fine-tuning of it. And let's look at the 5th one, and this is the lack of control. Now, very important for this particular member, because this member was always in control, right? Remember, as I shared with you at the start of this video, this member was used to doing things in a certain way. He had been accustomed to running his finances in a certain way. And here, he felt like he was going to lose control. And the secret I want to share with you is, when you get the resignation planning correctly done, you are always in control. You are always in control, and you are in control of multiple elements, meaning you are in control of the lump sum that you are receiving because you can adjust it, right? You are in control of the income that you get because you can adjust that income every year, especially if you're planning the way that I've shared in previous videos. You're also in control of the amount of tax you pay, how much or how little tax that you pay, you see? You're in control of how you budget. And if you are investing, you're in control of where this money is going to be invested. You're even in control of who's your financial planner, see? Who you're going to partner with. And if there are anything that you are unhappy with, you can always change, right? When you get this thing done properly. So you don't have to have a fear of control, because when you plan this resignation very carefully, you are always in control. Now, again, I hope the video has made sense to you. Please go through all the 5. I'm curious to know, if you're open to share which of the 5 deadly sins you feel you might be dealing with. And is there something that I could do to help you? Post a comment below, let me know. If you are new to the channel, remember to subscribe. And the benefits of subscribing are simple. What YouTube will do is it will share the videos amongst other government employees, because you can see this is something that is of particular interest for other members. And this is how I believe we can empower the community together. I'll see you in the next video.